I'm Suzanne Ross of the Raven Foundation. Welcome back to Devils, Saints, and Scoundrels, our study of Fyodor Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. This is part 2. I'm calling it Dostoevsky's Politics, because what I'd like to do is give you a little background, a little sense of what was going on in Russia in the mid-19th century when Dostoevsky was a young man and forming his ideas. And so you have a sense of who he was speaking to as he was writing this novel. What were the big philosophical and political discussions going on at the time? In the mid-1800s in Russia, there was a group of intellectuals in St. Petersburg that the young and early successful writer Dostoevsky was part of. And they were just coming in contact with Enlightenment ideas that had been sweeping through Europe for the last 150, 200 years, but just coming to Russia. And they were hitting Russia, which was a country of deep orthodoxy, deep traditions, highly stratified social system. The wealth was concentrated in the czar and the landed classes, and the majority of the people were landless peasants called serfs. So there was a great deal of economic and political inequality. And the social circle, it was a literary intelligentsia circle that Dostoevsky was involved in, and they were enamored of the ideas of equality and egalitarianism that were coming out of the Enlightenment. So what was happening at the time was there were two sort of strains of thinking and that were dominating the conversation. And these are the ideas that eventually led into socialism. And so they call themselves socialists, but I don't want you to have a whole lot of baggage around that word. It really isn't about communism or a political ideology. It's about finding a way for everyone to be honored and respected as human beings and have equal access to power and economic mobility. So it really was an egalitarian movement. So the one of the strains that Dostoevsky was part of then and stayed a part of his whole life was a socialism that drew its rationale from the Bible, from biblical principles. Basically what it said is the reason we need to honor each human being and that everyone has a right to a full life is because we're all created creatures by God. We are all beloved by God, and so the rationale for their thinking was in God, was in creation and in the order of creation. The other strand, which was highly influenced by the Enlightenment rationalist thinking of Rousseau and Descartes and those Nietzsche, those kinds of people, was that they were proclaiming the death of God. We really don't need God. All we need is to recognize that we're all rational human beings and that it's in everyone's best interest to share and have a society in which everybody's desires are met and everybody is fulfilled, and that once everyone knows what's the best for the society at large, we'll all participate in it. So it was this very optimistic, rational humanism. Now, there was a big problem for Dostoevsky with that, because he realized that when you do without God, you begin to elevate the individual to God's place. Okay, so again, I'm going to quote Andrew McKenna, our Raven friend and lifelong fan of Dostoevsky and a literature professor at Loyola. So he speaks with some authority here. He said that it is Dostoevsky's view that when we stop believing in God, we will not install rational utopia among us, but will become gods for one another, however grotesquely. That's the end of the quote. And what Andrew is referring to is something that we're going to see throughout the brothers Karamazov, in all the human relationships that are broken in that novel. And Dostoevsky had a very profound insight, and that was that when you replace God with self and let the individual's desires be the ultimate arbiter of what's good and right and just, rather than our rootedness in God's creation, that we're created beings, we're engaging in a bit of self-delusion, because there really is no self that exists outside of our relationships with one another. So to elevate the self to the ultimate arbiter is to elevate our relationships to the ultimate arbiter. And our relationships are one of need and dependence. And so we elevate the other to the position of God. And that seems a little abstract right now. I want you to hold on to it for a minute, think about it, and stay with me as we move to part 3, where we'll get into some of Dostoevsky's examples and reasons for why he came to that conclusion. So thank you very much.